Get ready. It's coming. An epic event so sweeping, only the Justice League can lead us into it. The Six Flags 45th Anniversary Celebration. See the new Bugs Bunny National Park and join us for Bugs Bunny's Daily Parade Spectacular. And coming soon, the new El Toro, the world's greatest wooden coaster. Get your season pass at sixflags.com. Six Flags Great Adventure. More than a theme park, it's an experience.
Hello, and welcome to episode number 15 of Some Great Adventures, the podcast for old friends who met and worked at Six Flags Great Adventure in Jackson, New Jersey. Chat about our days at the park. Our podcast is made possible by our wonderful friends at the Shared Universe Podcast Studio. And as always, we're recording via Facebook Live, which will be available forever until Scott gets Me Too'd on our Facebook page. And the audio version will be available on all podcasting platforms sometime later this week. I am Steve Hicks, and my co-hosts are
Scott Loudon,
Chris Peluso,
and Auletti.
Gentlemen, we have not one, but two very special guests today, both of whom have always been at the very top of our guest list since we first talked about starting this podcast. Welcome to the podcast. First of all, the person who I literally always think of when I think of the operations office, who is kind of, in my mind, the Michael Scott of the operations office, except not an idiot. but
Hi.
Hey.
And then our second guest is Andy's better half, Jackie Auletti, who will always be base Jackie to me. How the hell are you both doing? Thank you for joining us.
Good, thanks.
Excellent.
Yes, thanks so much.
Excellent. You are welcome. As always, when we have guests, we like to first learn about their GA career. When did you start? What positions did you work? Do not say anything right now. What work positions did you work? And when and why did you leave the park? Lynette, let's kick off with you. When did you start at Six Flags?
Actually, I've been trying to think about that, and I think it was 84, and I started in grounds in 120. Karen Fanning was my supervisor, and I was there for a couple years and then went right into the office and stayed there the rest of the time.
It's funny because when I think of old 120, like my times when me and Andy were like little kids working in 120, basically, I remember when we first started going to the parties, in my memory, it was always Lynette and Karen. Like you two were inseparable at those old 120 parties. And like a lot of the good times I have, I always just remember you two, like always being like the partner team, you know? So it's kind of funny. You, Andy.
Oh yeah, no, Lynette, you were already working in the office when I started.
Oh yeah,
it was in '87, I believe. Yeah, so yeah,
that's the
only thing I ever think of you as. I never even picture you in the park.
Oh yeah, nope. I was sweeping the grounds and getting in trouble and walking around.
So, how long were you in grounds?
Maybe then when Andy came in, I must have gone into the office that year. So I was there for, I want to say 2 or 3 years. Like I became a lead, and then it was before the season started when we were like doing the prep work before the park opens. Mm-hmm. I interviewed for the office position and I got it. So it maybe 3 or 4 years, like tops.
Still, that's a lot. Like
I was just thinking the same thing. You did time in grounds, though.
Yeah. Oh man, I did time in grounds. Actually, you know who hired me? John Sheehan.
Wow.
Do you remember John Sheehan? And I remember when I went in, I was like, I want to work in rides. That's all I want to do. And he was like, no, you gotta like hang out, like you gotta walk around. You want to see what's going on, and you'll be able to chit chat with everyone. And you know, dumbass, I'm only 16. What do I know? I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds great. Oh yeah, grounds. He sucked me right in.
That's funny. When you left the office, and like I'm hoping this isn't a controversial question, but when you left the office, did you just leave because you felt it was your time to just get out of the park, or did you leave? Like, why did you leave the park?
Well, that was the whole merger, the office merger, and I like it was like my time to go. Like it wasn't too much ugly shit went down, and I couldn't be there anymore. Like it's so ugly, and I felt so betrayed, and I just couldn't stay there anymore. I actually tried to. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go.
Oh, I actually was working with Karen again, doing training, just trying to see like something else to do.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I just can't do this. I was betrayed, and I had to go. It's my time.
Was literally going to say, it sounds like the path a lot of us took, because I had the same thing. I got downsized as a full-timer for the, doing the visual games. And then, thankfully I was actually offered another full-time position in foods, which I had swore I was never going to work in. And I stuck to my guns on that one. I mean, no offense, Chris. I know you did your time.
No, you know my feelings on it. And, I went to culinary school, and I'm like, avoid like the plague.
But ironically, the thing that I think kept me there longer wasn't so much having the full-time position. It was the same thing where like we worked over the winters working with Karen, doing like the HR stuff and all that, and going out and interviewing people and hiring people for HR. So it was kind of funny. That was probably the best thing we ever did, though, because for a lot of us, like that got like Kenny Mouth, that got Scott, that got Andy, it got a bunch of us jobs into a whole different career path that we would probably never have thought of anyway, but going into the HR hiring career path, which is like, like it was kind of cool because that gave us a little bit of an out. I didn't go that route, but these guys ended up hiring me for the route that I'm in now. So it's still all ended up tying in.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it was the same thing. It was like, I could have taken that other full-time position, but I knew that that it was in the middle of the buyout as well. And the worst thing you could do is become a first-year full-timer in any department when the place gets bought out. And thank God I didn't do that, because they were bought out the next year, and I don't remember how many, but they cut like half the full-time staff for that buyout. So
always, yep.
Too funny.
I think
it's amazing to see how. Oh.
No, go ahead, Lynette.
No, I was just going to say how much talent that place has seen and just let slip through their fingers. It's so sad in a way, because could you imagine, like, if we ruled the school? Holy hell, that place would be rock star.
Right. Slightly more money, I probably would have stayed, but they couldn't come close to anything on the outside, and you start to get older, you're getting married and all this stuff, and it's like the $25K or $30K, it just doesn't.
It's just not going to cut it anymore.
Not going to get you home. So we had to do what we had to do.
How talented a lot of the people who were there. I mean, obviously not me, but a lot of the other
people. I was looking at you when it was said.
Not even myself, just some of the people that we watched walk through there. It's crazy.
But like, we were all like ignorant of like what you can make on the outside world. So, it was kind of weird.
That is absolutely true. I will say, like, it was funny because I went into healthcare, which cracked me up, because I'm like, I finally got full-time. I finally got healthcare, and I don't even understand what my HMO is. I just want to do a copay. I know nothing about healthcare here. And then I get hired in by these guys into a healthcare company, which easily I end up doing well at, only because of my management skills from Six Flags. That's literally what got me so well positioned. And a lot of the skills I learned at Six Flags in networking and just how to talk to people and manage people properly, how not to do that. Like, I mean, that's another thing you learned at Six Flags, bad management. Because as much as good management was, we were all kids, and there's a lot of bad management there too, because they just need the managers, right? They need the supervisors. Yeah. So it transferred really well. But then it's like I think the very first podcast episode, I did the ratio of what we were getting paid at Six Flags versus what you make in the outside world. And it was insane. Even what you made at Six Flags, I was there, up until 97, starting in 84. And in that 13 years, like, it looked like I did an incredible pay raise scale. But it was like, when you really look at it, they're nickel and diming me every year. Pay raise scale is ridiculous,
Right. Every year, like a quarter.
Well, that's because you sucked and I didn't. So,
I know. Sabrina just said it in the chat, like, just like you were saying. Most of what I've learned and what I use comes from there. A lot of companies, I don't know, they don't have leadership training. They may have a little bit here and there, but nothing in comparison to the money that they spent on leadership and management training there. So
I think it was more trial by fire, like they threw you in.
That as well.
And I I remember making like literally life and death decisions.
Yeah.
Thinking like $7.50 an hour, like running around there as a 20-year-old. Like it was insane.
How many
But that's
times?
what it is. They give you all this responsibility that really nobody else would at that age.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
you say all the time that, I use stuff that I learned there.
Exactly.
Well, you think about I was 18 years old, 19 years old, 21 years old, and I'm paying 1,500 people a day and managing their birth, life, death, like the hiring where they maintain for, almost 1,000 employees. Who am I? Like, it's crazy when you think about what they gave us and how they gave us the opportunity. In that respect, it was amazing. And all the things that we did learn and are able to pull from it.
Yeah, for sure. And it was a variety too. I mean, if you took advantage of the opportunities they gave you, there was so much you can learn. Like,
yes,
during the winters, we had the opportunity. Like, I worked with I worked with Kathy, and we created all the ride manuals for 2 winters. So therefore, I all of a sudden understood how to do, like, create manuals, create tests, modify tests, do all that type of stuff. That's stuff that even now in my current job, I apply to other things. And it's like, 30 years later, it's kind of crazy.
It is.
By the way, Allison Dukes is in the comment and said, you guys are the absolute best boss.
Allison.
Hey. She's adorable. Love you.
I was just going to say real fast, like, I think we all did a little time, the 4 of us, in grounds. And we had to talk about bathrooms, how somehow we all avoided it. But Lynette, I'm guessing you did not, after 3-4 years, avoid the bathroom clean. Somehow we avoided it. I don't know. I never had to clean a bathroom.
Oh, no. I had to clean them. I had to scrub them, boil them. It was... Oh my
I remember
God.
the training and being told that this red one will kill you if you stay in the bathroom, and the blue one is safe to use. I do remember that, and a little.
Or mixing chemicals like the Lysol and the bleach and the Comet. Making like
Comet. Yes, I do remember the training, but somehow we avoided that test.
No, I had to do it.
Nice.
Although I'm going to take a step back, Chris. I disagree. Although when I was 15-year-old working at grounds, they tried to get me to clean poop that someone rubbed all over the.
Oh, that's right. That's right. But I thought you bailed. I thought you were like,
I did bail on that. However, as a supervisor, I absolutely did help foam bathrooms at least 3 or 4 times.
Nice.
Especially when we had that one year where we were merged with grounds. I always felt like I'm just an asshole if I'm just telling these people to do this and I don't go in and like help them out.
Exactly. Somehow. I didn't try. It just happened. May and Blue Parrot.
I was like, I'm not going to do that.
Again, he wonders why he didn't get the 50 cents, and he just said, I refuse to help anyone do any of that when I was their supervisor.
That's the talent right there. That's what I was talking about. Yes.
There's always somebody else to do it, so
There was when I helped too. I still helped,
Yeah.
So
All right, moving on from you. Okay.
Very good.
Jackie, how did you start at the park? When did you start at the park? What was your career like?
I'm trying to think, but I started in merch, and I was.
I had no idea.
So I was only 15 at the time, and they weren't hiring into a lot of the other departments if you were under 16 because of all the labor laws. So, I was the balloon girl up at the front gate, and I basically made balloon umbrellas all day and hung out with the clowns up front. If you remember, the clowns used to hang out at the front gate when people came in. And then, I would just walk around the park with the balloons all day.
You just made me feel like the stupidest son of a bitch in the world, because I also came in at 15, also wanted rides and couldn't get into rides. And I was like, they're like, do you want grounds? And I was like, okay. And here you are. You're like, I was out making balloon animals. And I'm like, I was refusing to clean poop off of walls by day 2,
So let me tell you a little secret, because I also worked in HR. When somebody came in the door, you were kind of like, I know what department I'm going to put them in.
I know. And believe me, I came in looking like the most huckster hayseed in the world.
You looked like grounds.
Experience. I came in a suit. I actually came in and nobody else had a suit, but my mom was like, if you're going in for a job, you have to wear a suit. That is the proper thing for a man to do. And I was like, okay. So at 15, I go in for a suit, and I am the only person out of like 45 people that are in that HR waiting room in a suit, and I felt so freaking uncomfortable. I was like, and I got it for ground, so they must have literally been like, "This guy's an idiot. Look at this idiot." You know?
They put the sorting hat on you right away.
Look at him picturing midnight grounds.
Yeah, midnight.
Rides,
ground.
merch, poop. Yeah, that's you. There you
They
go.
walked towards you with it. It yelled, "Grounds!" Didn't you get on your head?
Not
I
exactly.
mean, at the end of
like
the day, I did make lead by the end of the year. So a 15-year-old leading grounds, that was kind of cool, right? You know?
that.
Hell
It was
yeah.
definitely the suit that got you that lead job.
For the record, I was the only 15-year-old who made it into rides directly. So
You were. You
Yeah.
were.
Yeah,
John.
Lynette knows.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the following year I came back and I didn't want to be in merch. I wanted to be in rides. You know, I was old enough now, but all the spots were filled up. So the only thing left was food. So I worked in food service. I worked in the employee diner. That was fun.
Oh yeah, that must have been fun.
I remember balloons. I don't remember employee dining. That's great.
I worked in employee dining, you know, ringing up my coworkers, and yeah, that was fun. That was fun. But I did get to see how the food in there is made, and that's a little frightening.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say about that. But
On
the
the good
butterscotch
side,
pudding
we
was
became soups.
bomb.
We never ate in there anymore. So.
Yeah, there's no time. Yeah.
And then the following year, I came back and I worked on Shockwave, and then I worked on Batman the Ride with Chris Peluso was my lead that year. Awesome times, good
Hell
times.
yeah.
And then I started working in the office with Lynette while I went to nursing school.
Yeah.
So
When you were in the office, it felt like you, at least most of the time I remember, it felt like you were dispatch. Was that primary what you
I
did?
worked dispatch a lot because I came from rides, and so I knew the codes and stuff. And at the time, we had Christine, Andrew's sister, working there, and she didn't know any of that stuff. So I think we were pretty slim at the beginning there of the season, and then I loved working in dispatch. I love people listening
too.
to what
I
I have
loved
to
it.
say.
Yep.
And you know, I love coming in early, and all the maintenance guys and all those people come in, and you chit chatting with them, and I loved working in there. You know, I really did.
The office was always the place I felt like no matter how shitty your day was, you could go in. The office employees were always fantastic. You could go in and they kind of help decompress you when you first walked in the door. And then you got to go in the back and like kick your fucking desk or whatever. And then it's like, but get away from everybody and fully decompress. But it was always like that place that like level set you so you didn't take anything home. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's great.
It was
That's
always, it was
Yeah, that
always
is nice.
practice. Yeah.
I like
We
that.
tried.
There was that too.
We did. We had nowhere to go in the back and kick though. So
You could have kicked our desk. We wouldn't have gave a crap. So.
we did not go back there. That was a frightening area. We did not go back there.
Only for Steve's pictures that he had up.
I had pictures of the Three Stooges. That was you and Gary. What are you talking about?
Like I said, scary.
So to finish up my great adventure career, you know, Jim got promoted to HR, and he asked me if I would come over and work with him, you know, helping him out. He needed a heavy. He needed a bad guy. So I went over with him, and that was a really interesting experience for me. And I've learned a lot, you know, from HR that's taken me through my nursing career too. So, you know, and then obviously when I graduated, they offered me a job in first aid as the RN down there, but I was a little nervous taking that job as I would have been the only person there first year out of nursing school with all those people in the park that if God forbid anything happened, I really didn't have any experience. So I went and did what everybody else does, worked in the hospital.
There you go. And when you say Jim, that was Jim Chappelle?
Yeah.
I love Jim Chappelle. Jim
I
Chappelle is he's one of the dudes that we're all, you know, very, very, very like friendly with. We all dig, you know, and it's cool because it's like, you know, we're 30 years plus, you know, after all of our pretty much careers at this point, but there's still some people that when you think of them, there's nothing but a good thought. You know what I mean? Like there's no bad, and that's not to say that you might not have had a tiff here or there in all your time there, but at the end of the day, it's like, you know, I think of Lynette and I think of like the person that took care of the office that I loved. I think of Jackie, I'm like, Bass Jackie, one of those people I can fuck with on the radio who actually got the sense of humor and wasn't a dick about it and angry and being like, get off the radio, you know? There's people that you just think of and you immediately love, and Chappelle falls in that category,
Definitely.
You know what was the fun in bass was the night I turned 21, and midnight, everybody was saying happy birthday over the radio, and then we all went out to the outpost, and I don't remember what happened that night.
That's all right.
That's usually how it happens.
It's funny because the radio was an interesting world in itself, because if you were not a liked person, people did not play or interact with you on the radio at all. But if you were a liked person, people would say things like happy birthday. People like if you were a liked supervisor and you said at the end of the season, like, all right, going 10-7 for the season, cricket. Like, no, you would get, if you were liked, you would get, have a great year, have a great winter. It'd be like all these people. And if you were not liked, crickets. No one said anything. It was like, bye,
And even if you weren't liked or disliked, if somebody just found out that something bothered you, I won't say the name, I'll say Buttar. I think you've all heard that whispered over the radio before. That was like years of it going on. And I had the pleasure of working with the actual person. And he was a very nice guy, good soup. And I don't know where it came from or what, but he used to piss him off. And everybody would keep doing it for years. It was so bad.
Oh, my God, I love it. Here's a question for both of you. What was it like being a dispatch during a power failure?
Oh, my God. I know.
It was amazing. I actually thrived on it.
No, I hated that.
I love pressure.
I
so.
know.
I know.
Well, it's actually weird because it's not only the dispatch that was responsible, but the office had to come in, and they actually had to go, like, somebody would call all of 120 rides, somebody would call all of 130, 140, 150, 160, and then let the dispatcher know in turn what rides were running and what rides were signaled to, what ones were just down. So it was a two-played in that for a power failure.
Right. So for the people who are listening, who are not people that have worked at Great Adventure, what dispatch is, it's the radio operator in our operations office who basically ran the radio. So, people can't just sit and talk on the radio, like for whatever reason they want to. The radio was meant to be used for business purposes only. And basically you're only using the radio if you need to talk to somebody about staffing or talk to somebody about a ride being up or down. But when rides go up and down, what would happen is the person working the ride would call dispatch and tell them the ride's broken down, or later on call them and say, the ride's now fixed, blah, 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 which usually a supervisor would do over the radio. And a dispatcher is basically a person that has to basically keep track of everything. During a power failure, every ride is down. So everyone's basically bombarding the dispatch person, that one person running dispatch, which is including all of the areas of the park, all the different operations departments are now hitting that one person with this ride's going up, this ride's down, this, that. If there's an injury on the ride, that's getting called, all that's getting called. And that one person suddenly goes from having a, kind of chill job to suddenly a nightmare of being the director of the orchestra on everything going on, and the responsibilities all on their shoulders. I had to sit in for dispatch as part of my training, but never actually be dispatch. So I just sat in there for 4 hours. Might have been with you, Jackie, or it might have been with Harry. I don't remember who it was, but I think it might have been you, actually.
You would have remembered if it was Harry.
Probably. But it was actually easy for me. But power failure is a whole different world. That person is like such a vital person. It's insane. And they're leading everything. So, yeah.
I can imagine that would be like the worst of the worst. Because, like, as a soup, you basically ran to your most important ride during a power failure, and somebody else took your other majors.
Yep.
But like you guys got hammered from everybody.
Yes.
Right. And for any non-rides people, I mean, it's not
admissions, right? Everything.
Yeah, they're not just down. Everything's down, and all the major rides, unless you got real lucky and just happen to not have a train loaded or something, they're all in areas that they shouldn't be. So they're all they all need evacuations. It's usually when a ride goes signal 2, it's rare that it needs to be evacuated. But, or we changed it to unloading, because evacuating so, harsh. But that's what you're doing, really. And all of them needed it because the power was dumped, and you can't just turn the power on and send them again, Although we all know that that's been done a handful of times. But you're not supposed to do that. It's not done very often.
What are you talking about, Willis? I didn't do that.
Sometimes you do what you got to do, and you listen to who said it. Yeah.
Hey, Chris, when we get to a little bit of news later on, keep what you just said in mind, because we might be talking about a ride that just got started up after a breakdown on its own pretty recently. So.
Oh yeah, things happen, but for the most part.
What do you guys have? You guys have any other questions about dispatch? I always wonder, and do not give any details, but did either of you have to deal with a death while you were in dispatch?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I would have figured during your time you probably would have. That right there alone, man. When I was in dispatch and realized you're the person that has to kind of that call in goes to you and then you have to coordinate, I was like, yeah, I don't want that. I was like, it's bad enough I might get it on the live end at a ride, or when you're in grounds or covering whatever the hell we were covering at the time. But I'm like, I don't want to coordinate that. That's rough.
Awful.
Give you a lot of.
And I was in nursing school at the time, so I was like, I really wish I was kind of out there. I kind of felt like that too.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
I didn't think I was going to like dispatch because I loved being out in the park and everything, but I was like, open to try anything and help out or whatever. I did it a few times. I really enjoyed it. It was nice. You learned a lot too. It was great hanging with everybody in the office and stuff. It was great. And I believe I did change
one day.
Too, so nobody could come into your area, but you could kind of participate, or you could shut your upper gate too, and
Yeah, it was cool. It was really cool. And I believe I did train with Harry, and he was a great trainer. He was great.
Steve, do you remember back when the original part of the supervisory training program was you had to spend a day in dispatch?
That was why I did it. But I only had to do 4 hours, and I didn't have to actually run it. I just had to shadow a dispatcher. But I'm pretty sure prior to me, because you remember, I felt like now that we're taking these, while we're on these podcast episodes, we're taking step backs and looking at the history of our transition from starting at the park to the end of the park. I feel like we have steadily seen where, as we got closer to leaving the park, the requirements for supervisors became very less stringent, much simpler to hire somebody and just throw them out.
Yes, that was my job.
There wasn't a need for an area trainer to make sure they knew all the rides anymore. There wasn't a need to run dispatch for 8 hours. I feel like they just kind of shortened that training more and more because they needed to get people out in the park and running. But I think in the beginning, I think they had to do 8 hours of dispatch and actually dispatch. The person more shadowed then than they shadowed the dispatcher. But by my time, I just had to shadow and listen for 4 hours. It was supposed to be a full day too. And after 4 hours, they were like, no, we can use you in the park, go out. And that was it. That's all I ever got.
They didn't even do that when I was.
That's my point. Yep. I had a feeling you didn't, because I thought the people after me didn't even have to do that anymore. So I think we're lucky, Andy, because we were kind of right on the last of the verge of the people that had to be trained really in detail.
Yeah, because it took a couple of months. You had to go train on every ride in the park. You had to do admissions. You had to do guest services. You had to do grounds. You had to do.
Well, during our time, you weren't a full-time supervisor. Your first year was almost a whole year of training. You really weren't on your own until the end of the freaking year. Whereas other people, they got a month and they were on their own.
A month, man! I told you I spent most of my time at the top of Riptide. Most of my time. If I tell you what I remember from training, most of it was at the top of Riptide, getting sunburned. Yeah. It was extremely low. The shadowing was at best half. Half of the time Riptide, half of the time with shadowing.
Yeah, I got a week or two of walking with Steve or someone else, and then I was on my own, and somebody was shadowing me, but it was they were off doing whatever. Yeah, God knows what Steve was doing during those times. And
when dispatch first started, it was in the office. It was over when you walked in the office. It was on the right, and nobody stood there. It was actually whoever was in the office, the two people who were in the office. If it happened to go off, you ran over there and answered it. It was not even a big deal. It was just a little, it was just right there, sitting there. No one, you didn't have to man it or anything. The radios were everywhere, in the back.
Oh, yeah.
back there.
Well,
You
then
just
wasn't
pulled the
that-
radios. It was only because of Jordan.
I was going to say,
Once
wasn't that
Jordan
Jerry's
came in,
project?
everything
Yeah.
changed.
Wow.
But was it still
Yes.
4 departments in there, Lynette?
What?
Was it still rides?
Oh yeah, it was. Yep, it was all the 4
Wow.
departments, but they didn't. They just had it literally. It was just right over there on the left. When you walked in the office, it was right there on the right. And it was just the. Yeah. In fact, I was like so angry when I first found out we were getting a whole room, because I was like, oh, you're going to be like excluded from everyone. You're not going to be able to know what's going on, and that first instinct is like, what? Why are you changing it? But then once you realized, yeah, it was so weird because. It became such a literally it was the office, it was dispatch, and it was payroll.
Right.
So they, became very, but yeah, it
And
was just a little thing.
And when I started working there, you said, you have to do everything. You have to do dispatch and the office. Okay. I was
Yes.
cool with that. But I like dispatch better. And then Christine came on the scene and she didn't know how to do dispatch. I said, so I'll take her shifts. And then Harry came on the scene and he didn't do the office, but he only did dispatch. So I was back to in
who
the
knows?
rotation.
Yeah,
Back to in the
who knows?
rotation.
Harry did do some of the office, but I think once the whole
duress.
office thing came in and Jordan became specific about certain things that he wanted and didn't want, and it was his ball game, so we did exactly what he wanted us to do. So some of that was because of what he wanted. So, and I loved him. Loved Jordan.
Me too.
He was the greatest person. He was amazing.
It's pretty funny because I did too. I always thought Jerry was fantastic.
Yes.
And all my interactions with him are always good. But ironically, in our chat, we actually have one that's it's not an anti-Jerry.
No.
But yeah, Chris, you want to
I was just going to say, love Jerry. Loved him. Really enjoyed him. Can be cranky at times.
Yes.
Oh, my God. Oh, yes.
And snap. And then later on, just be okay. Like it never.
I was
Yeah.
terrified of him. Like I was scared shitless. I did everything. I was scared of him, but I admired him immensely.
I didn't hear him one time, and we're, at Batman.
Oh.
Little loud. And he told me he had it and I didn't hear him and he had to say it twice. He got a little cranky. You know what I mean? But
Oh yeah.
Overall though,
Yes.
I thought he was great. It's just the way he was. He was great.
One of your
Working in dispatch, his girlfriend,
Yes.
fiance, whatever, would call all the time. And because he was always out in the park somewhere, so I would have to radio and find him. And meeting her, I guess, over the telephone, I realized there was a differerent side of him. You know what I mean?
Yes. I know. I
saw
talked to
that.
her a lot. That was so cute.
And she would say he sent her things or did something. And I was like, there's another side to him that's super sweet and tender. And we never see that.
Right. Exactly. I think that's why you can see past certain things because you did see another side of him.
Yeah.
It's funny because as a soup, it was the same way. If you were a black tag or a red tag, Jerry Jordan wasn't your friend. He was just another management guy that was out in the park, and you kind of worried. You kind of worried he might be out there to get you in trouble or be looking at you making a mistake. You didn't view it that way, but then when you became a supervisor, the more you hung with him in the office. Not that we hung out with him because he had his own back room, but the more he would come in or he would call you into his office, or the more he would see you handle something bad that was a bad situation very well, the more he became friendly to you. And by my last, I'd say 5 years, I adored Jerry. He was one of those guys that I just trusted. If something was bad and I went up and talked to him, I wasn't going to get reamed. He was going to take care of it. So it was one of the things where it was a very different relationship and I really liked him. And I actually just thought he was a nice guy at that point, you know what I mean? Which is so different than when I first knew who he was,
Yeah.
I also remember every single employee barbecue we ever had.
Oh, yeah.
Jerry
He
would
worked
be
that.
flipping burger. He'd
Yes,
be
he always
working the
cooked,
whole
yep.
day
Yep.
with the
Yep.
employees. Yeah.
And just
His
talking
little way to give
everybody,
back.
Super friendly.
Now, ironically, one of your prior dispatchers, Allison, just posted in chat, though, she did have an instance where she had to call a possible fatality on top of the Asian, and Jerry came in and reamed her about it, but you backed her up fully, Lynette, and then Jerry kind of backed down, was like, okay, it was all done right, never mind. But that also goes to point out, I don't think that's such a negative to Jerry, though. Jerry was the guy who, if you fucked around the radio, get off the radio.
Oh yeah, you were banned.
He did not like radio bullshit, man.
And you act professional at a breakdown. He used to
Yep.
come to every single flush at the Rapids. Everyone, he would always go if he was in the.
Oh my God! And don't say flushed.
Everyone, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
And he didn't like that. And I think I remember one employee, like a couple employees, like skipping around the reservoir and stuff, and they were just like overjoyed that this was happening. He was pissed, rightfully so too.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
was pissed. It
Well,
was not
because so many people could
wasn't
get
their
hurt.
shining moment. I'll say that there were a lot of very successful, breakdowns there, but that one wasn't so good. So,
One time
yeah, he was pissed.
I ever had a direct dealing with him was like I trashed the radio, one of the newer, smaller, sweeter radios.
Yeah.
But it was because I had to evacuate 2 kids with severe autism off the lift of the hydroflume.
Oh, is this when it fell?
No, but nobody fell. But I had to, and it was the middle of a thunderstorm. It was
No, I meant the
pouring.
radio, because I remember there were many a times where radios dropped from the top of the hydroflume into the fucking like down. I remember that.
It was just water damage from the pouring rain.
Okay.
Like I was trying to call in. He's like, turn the radio off. But then I didn't get any shit because I was like, listen, I had to make a call. Like, these kids were freaking climbing the railing, the handrails at the top of the lift. I was like, I had to get them down now. So he didn't get me much trouble with that.
Yeah, he's like the definition though of a firm but just boss. You know what I mean? Like even when he got irate with you, you knew that there was a reason why he was doing it, and it may have pissed you off at the moment, but when you took a step back, you're like, all right, I understand what he was doing, you know? And he would comp that. Like the perfect example is like the Allison example. Like when it gets pointed out, like, dude, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, you know, without pointing out, by the way, I'm 18 years old. I don't fucking know any better, you know? Like, he would calm down, you know?
Well, one of the few things I remember during my super training that week or two, you told me explicitly, he's like, do not, relay any bad information over the radio because there's plenty of people listening around the park who are just waiting for any kind of
They are. And 6 is not your friend. Don't think you can go to 6 and chat. Because everyone goes to 6 and hears you dummy. You know, like, don't do that. That was also one of the things I always trained immediately because everyone used to be like, "I'll just go to 6," and it's like you'll just get fired. You know,
and make sure you switch back. You don't stay on 6. That's happened a lot of times. It's like, I didn't hear any calls. That's because you're on 6, asshole.
True.
Yeah.
I'll leave this with my final thought on dispatch is that when it was in that room, though, that room had the bi-level door where the bottom would always be closed and the top would always be open. Yep. And the top, if you walked in and that top was closed, it was one of 2 reasons. Somebody was in there having a private chat, or 3 reasons, sorry. Somebody was in there and having lunch and don't want you to fuck with them. Leave them alone so they could eat their damn lunch while they're dispatching. Or shit was going down. Stop bothering them. Like power failure. Door got shut. Like just leave them the hell alone. You know. So,
yes.
But you guys have any other finals before we move on to dispatch? Any other ideas? Peluso, Scotty, Andy.
My favorite dispatch is still Heidi with the bees. I don't know if anybody else was there that day, but Heidi with the bees yelling at me, "Chris, get the Batman!" And I'm like, "What?" She goes, "There's bees everywhere. They're attacking the ride." And she couldn't have been more right. That's exactly what was happening. There was a swarm of wasps.
There's no code for that.
There's no.
I don't think there is.
It was a bad bee movie. It was so great.
I think my favorite is when you got an inexperienced supervisor and they'd be like, 160 base, and you'd hear 10-9, 10-9. Can you just call dispatch, please? Shut up! Stop calling me on the radio.
Everybody like hold the radio away from your mouth. Yeah. Like, they're just sitting there like idiots.
10-9.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to something a little bit different. So you guys would be in the office and you would get to experience something that almost nobody else would get to experience. Almost all of our terminations of employees would be in the back of the office. And we would usually close the door, but that didn't prevent anyone from hearing anything. And sometimes we wouldn't close the door because it wasn't expected to be like a really bad situation or anything. You know, you're terming them for, no shows and they finally decide to show up 6 weeks later, like, bye, But do you guys have any remembrances of any unique or interesting or maybe volatile terminations that you heard in the office?
Was anybody there that day when Steph had a line outside? It was like a deli. And she kept calling people. Like she would just keep bringing them back to me. Everything. It was a mix of written warning, suspension, termination. And if anybody was there that day, curious if anybody remembers that, it was great. Like and terrible at the same time because it was like 8-9 people, and it was like they were at the deli. And then at point, what's up, Scott?
What was the backlog for? Was that just one day's
I
worth?
think the backlog business. Wait, let me step in, Chris. I think the backlog is because Steph thought she was a state trooper giving tickets, and it was the end of the month, and she was like, "Look at all these people I haven't written up yet. I'm gonna bring them over today."
If I remember correctly, too, in pure Steph fashion, who I love, she was just like, "Hey, can you help me with some of these?" Like there was no like, "Hey, it's gonna be like 9, 10," and she laughed every time she came back with another one. She had that big smile on her face. She would come in for a quick like summation. This one's this, you know what I mean? It was so great. It was so great.
Love the firing and write-ups. Some supervisors did. I mean, I was like probably more like I didn't like it, but I did it because it was, I needed to. But like, do you guys get a sense of like who brings in the most people for write-ups and terminations or anything like that?
I really never paid attention to that at all. I really didn't.
I was gonna say I don't really. Yeah, like nothing that is like, profound or.
Was it pretty often though that people came up to get written up? I mean, I felt like
I don't know.
Yeah, it happened all the time.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know what was going on back there. We had a lot of stuff to do, and we were very busy in the office, working hard.
Slaving. We were slaving.
Love it.
Hey, every hour those admission numbers come in, and you have to do math every hour.
Nice.
Until we got the program, right?
Right,
And
then
the
we could
program?
punch it in.
For what?
The
Like,
count.
Oh no! When I left,
Yeah.
it was on paper still.
Yeah.
Oh, was it? Yeah, we ended up being able to put it on the computer.
Oh, that's nice.
But yeah, I thought it was fun to do a lot of that stuff
Oh
manually.
no,
It's
me
funny
too,
when,
definitely.
but
I do remember that.
now it's digital. Like they don't even do the count anymore.
Oh wow! And then in
So-
dispatch, you had to call it out every hour.
But I do
Yep.
remember that you were in the office like, a few minutes before the hour. Yeah, it was very busy.
You got all the-
big deal. Gotta get the count ready. And,
Right.
Oh yeah, because
It
if
was
that count was
important.
not out, we were dead
Right.
meat.
yeah.
Absolutely.
We were
Yeah,
dead
that's
meat.
funny.
That man was calling,
Oh,
"Where's
yes,
the
like,
count?"
Where's the
things
count?
after the hour.
I
Oh,
still
yeah,
want to
forget it.
call
We're-
today and just see if the code has changed. I just want to call
But
up.
they
like,
don't
hey,
even
just-
announce the count on the count. They don't announce it at all.
So did
Really?
the
Over the
count
radio.
ever, like not line up at the end of the night? Like you had 10,020 people come in and
No,
only
we didn't.
2,019 leave. You
No,
always
'cause
had
that
it.
wasn't accurate.
Right. We just. And you figured, half the time I always even wondered if they even read the gates.
It is through.
I mean,
was
I'm sure they did, but
At the end of the night, they were like, "We lost one person. go find them." I always wondered that.
We lost one person.
They're still living in the park. They're in the Conestoga wagon.
behind Best of the West,
Oh yeah, yeah.
underneath Conestoga wagon
That's
somewhere.
what I said.
Well, there's plenty of food to eat at least.
Yeah, it's true. It's funny. Like me and Scott were talking about like we were talking before this started, and I was like, I have a very simple question for him. And I asked Scott, I'm like, do you know the answer to this? And he's like, no, this is the simplest question for you guys. And it follows up on what Jackie just said. Looking back on the park, okay, and looking back when I would go into the office, and it didn't matter if I was a black tag, a red tag, or a blue tag. You guys always looked like you were so fucking busy. However, I never had a fucking clue what you did on a day-to-day basis. Outside, like I understood like the count and I understood like, basic things. But what was a day like being in the office from beginning to end? And I'm not saying that to point out like, did you actually just chill most of the day and just react or whatever? But I'm like, I had no freaking clue what you guys did on an 8-hour shift.
I remember, walking into operations, there was the big L-shaped desk. There was always 2 to 3 people behind the desk, plus the person over at dispatch. And we all knew what dispatch was doing. But yeah, and everybody always looked very hard at work doing things. But I was a mystery.
Well, think
we had
about
the
every
payroll
employee
office.
in that park. They
Right,
had to be
right.
maintained,
Right. They were all
hired,
paper files
wardrobe,
back then.
changing, hiring, training, people calling out, no showing, all those logs, you guys moving people from one ride to another ride, all that had to get done.
Yep.
So those tedious daily things was like, and we had 4 departments.
Right.
So it wasn't just rides. We had ground shows and admissions. So auditions and, calling people who no-showed 3 times and all that, like it was just
giving out the paychecks on Thursdays.
the paychecks.
Big day, big
Dealing
day.
with the problems from paychecks.
All the problems, like people would come in the office crying about their manager, their supervisor.
Oh my God, that too.
And we would
No.
Stephen Hicks, he's such a dick. He's so mean to me.
Big time.
People would come in and try to get you to transfer them to other
Yes.
Transfers all, and then we had to fill out the request forms, right?
Yep.
And then you give it to us and Peluso. What happened to that request form? Denied.
Well, because
we'll take it under consideration.
We had all the details on that person.
Well, the other
favorite thing is
we would get the transfer form and it would be like somebody in Koala Canyon. It's like, I feel like I deserve to work on the Rapids and I'm putting this in and I'm not even going I'm just going to give it to you guys. And then you guys would hand us this form. We're like, BBL.
So, like, the people at BBL that brought you transfer forms, did you just tell them, like, no, take this back, you're not going to get approved? Like,
No, we never dashed anyone's hope.
Nope, we said, here, fill this form out, we'll give it to the supervisor.
But here's the caveat. If I don't hire somebody for BBL, I'm going to be working in BBL on the days that they're short. So
that's a good point.
It behooves me to staff BBL really well.
Oh, yeah.
We actually have a friend who had one of the office women like Gigi who convinced him to go to BBL his first season because he didn't know any better finish. He was like, I didn't know. And he's like, oh, you should go to BBL. And he's like, oh yeah, I'll go to BBL.
Gigi huckstered it in. He totally did. And then it was like middle of the season. He came out. I talked about this on the last time he was on the podcast. He came out of BBL while I was the 120 supervisor, and he walked up to me, and I was actually going to the El Sombrero, which was right outside of BBL, and it was, I swear, like I was like out of Dickens. Please, sir, I work in BBL. May I please work the hat? I'm not looking for a coaster. I'm not looking for the log flume. I just want to work the El Sombrero. Please. And I was like,
just to get out of BBL, right?
I had to hear him out.
It worked. I put him on the hat. He actually got it by doing that. It totally worked. So
another ride that was difficult to staff, though.
Which one?
El Sombrero.
Oh, hell yeah.
Flat rides were difficult to staff.
Also, think about
I didn't ask them. I put them in a spot. I'm like, this is
Oh.
where you're working. I didn't give them a choice. When they came in after training,
I did
nope,
it wrong.
this is where you're going. Well, because we would get the list ahead of time. And they would, like Billy or, Ellen, and they would say, we need this filled, we need this filled, we need this filled. So a lot of times we didn't even have a choice. They didn't have a choice, unless they're a rehire
Just
for a
offered
couple of
some
years.
cash.
Hey.
Put me on the coaster.
Oh, I wish. That would have been a good
know.
idea. I could have said, you know what? Here, put it in the paycheck.
How much?
Me and Andrew Jackson want to work on the coaster.
Quick comment on Queenan. Queenan, I loved everyone. I even loved you, Queenan. He even loved you, Queenan. Queenan.
So here's a good follow-up to what do you do in the office? Here's a good follow-up. What was the most annoying thing a regular employee would do when they walked into that office? What would they do that would just make you be like, get the fuck out of the office right now? Like, what was one of the most annoying things that you could think of?
Other than bringing up paperwork late at the end of the night.
That's probably pretty bad.
Oh my God.
I had an incident. I corrected it, Allison.
Allison brought up how she got the fear of like God into Peluso because he was late in getting his turnstile.
And I put the fear of God in everyone. And it never happened again.
Because we
were first.
Yeah, we had a report that had to be done from those turnstiles. So
That's right.
We couldn't go home until you guys all brought that stuff in.
I mean, let's also be honest though. Me and Andy were in 120. The whole fucking farthest away you can be from the office, and our sheets were in. Peluso is 5 feet from the office in 150, and his shit can't get in on time. Come on,
working till 2-3 a.m. every night. It takes a toll. What am I going to say? Yes, I'm close, but
you were just trying to get change under the free fall along with everybody else. That's what you were doing.
Well, Steve, don't you remember that was like our gift, like we would pick somebody every night, go around, get the turnstile sheet.
That's what everyone would do.
And then you can go home. You didn't have to stay, so that was kind of, you just dangle that in front of people all day long. And then
you gotta rotate it.
I got a question. I mean, what's the most interesting? Because for anybody who doesn't know, the office staff a lot of times walk the VIPs around, right? Like you escorted various people. So what was the most interesting stories you have? I've got one too, but I'll let you go first. What was the most interesting VIP stories you remember like escorting? Like,
did you guys get to escort? I know Gigi got sent out there all the time, but did you guys?
Yeah, she was the one who was like the office designated
And Allison
VIP walker.
too.
And Allison,
Allison.
Yeah.
Well, that Gigi ended up going to PR.
Yeah.
For to work on, and then they pulled that from us and they gave it to them.
Right.
I don't even know. Just some of them were very demanding.
Yeah.
Expected us to like bend over backwards and pull the red carpet, and then some were super down to earth.
Who are the biggest names you remember? Do you remember any like really big names?
Oh my God, I can't remember what I ate for breakfast yesterday. You want me to remember 30 years ago?
For real.
I remember a lot of times some like rich person's kids that aren't even famous.
Yes.
Yeah, I escorted the guy who owned Radio City Music Hall.
Oh, wow. That's a good one.
And he was very nice, and he told me a lot of stories. I mean, basically, you were escorting them to the exits of the rides.
Yeah.
And, we knew our way around the park. So if they would be like, I want to go to this ride next, or I want to eat here, you would just take them to wherever they wanted to go. Or, like I said, up the exits to the rides, which was really obnoxious. Like, as somebody who worked in rides, I really hated that, having to go up the exit of the ride and be like, these people get to cut because they're with me.
I remember Trump always being there and being escorted around with his, Don Jr. and Ivanka.
Yes.
I don't remember that at all.
Oh my God, I don't remember him at all.
Okay, so here's the thing. I remember Trump when I was a lead being there, but both times it's so funny because I'm we're not a political podcast in any way, but I'm not pro-Trump, but it has nothing to do with Trump as a president. I've just never been pro-Trump because I'm a poker player and he fucking caused every casino I like to basically go out of business.
My ass kicked there many times too.
But I will say the reason I remember Trump I remember 2 times as a lead on the log flume, Trump coming to the park 2 years in a row. And the reason he was there is because supposedly out of his pocket, he paid to bring underprivileged kids from New York into the park. And there were a shitload of kids that were like with him and some other people that he was with. And they all got up the exit of the log flume both years. But it was one of those things where it was like, I thought that was cool. It was the only time in my life I remember thinking, that's pretty cool. Like, that's a really cool thing. And he did have a shitload of kids there. I remember that.
Well, I started like bumper cars, and I worked the bumper cars. Like
no, these weren't his kids, which were probably there. I didn't even know he had kids at the time. These were literally like kids that he had brought there.
And the other one I remember was when, I don't remember who the VIPs that were being escorted around were, but I was when I was a lead at Rapids, and 2 of the office women were escorting them. They came up with the people, and they were standing on the dock while the VIPs were on the ride, and the person who was operating forgot to take his foot off the pedal when he was commenting on how the various attributes of the 2 office women. It was Gigi and somebody else. And he was like saying it like into the microphone. So he was talking like, I was like, dude, after like a minute, I was like, you're on the mic. Like everybody can hear you, not just the 2 women, but also everybody in line and everything. I was like, you got to take your foot off the mic. That was pretty embarrassing. His name was Scott. I don't remember the last name. And no, it was not me. Like,
you know what? On that note, we never answered the question about the annoying thing in the office. And I have to say, I'm not going to name any names. But there was an office girl who caught the attention of one of the grounds workers who would work in the back. And he was always in the office and talking to her and leaning on the counter and, sending her flowers. And it was a bit much. Bit much for a while.
Like a whole summer?
And he worked in the back.
Definitely. He worked in, he cleaned the employee side.
Okay.
So he could easily walk in without anyone yelling at him.
Right. Because he kind of cleaned our area too a little bit,
Was it someone that primarily cleaned the dumpster pad?
I have no, what is that?
Big guy?
No, not him.
Okay.
Thank God it wasn't him. I'd have been afraid.
Yeah, well, that's because I was like, how would you get him out?
One year he was standing outside our door with a pitchfork, and Lynette had to be like, "Come on, you need to kind of like move along. You're frightening people here."
Pitchfork, okay.
And it was not October.
Right.
It was not Fright Fest.
Hey,
Nice.
what was the name of the one grounds person who like had a thing for kiddie pools? Like he would always climb in them anytime he saw
Same
them.
one.
That's who we're talking
Brian
about.
Oak.
Oh, Brian.
Oh, we're not.
Brian Stokes. Brian Stokes. Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
Stokes.
Yeah.
That's right.
This other person had also was named Brian, but a different last name.
Oh, okay. I now know what you're talking about. Okay, well there you go.
So he had like room in his heart for more than just kiddie pools. He actually found room in there for one of the office people too, I guess.
No, different person. That's
Different
what she said. Different person.
Okay.
Same first
Same
name.
first name.
I
They, I
remember
had to be wrangled occasionally.
Yeah.
Gotcha. When we're going back to the VIPs, I'm not gonna say the name of the employee, but I remember I got called over to the Buccaneer, and
It wasn't me, right?
it's not you. Just post your time. I called over the Buccaneer, and I want to say Gigi was the escort at the time that called me over, but I could be wrong. And this is when the escorts were given radio, so they can warn us that they were coming up on certain big rides. And I only got called up because the guy that was the ride lead refused to let them up the exit in the Buccaneer. And the best was I want to say it was Gigi. It was definitely a female escort. I want to say it was Gigi. I could be wrong, but I remember her. I remember coming up, and it's John Bon Jovi, and she's like, he actually walked up before me and said, "Hey, I'm John Bon Jovi. I don't want to cause a big thing. Can we just slip in?" And the employee, the lead goes, "I don't give a fuck if you're the Pope. No, go wait in
Oh my
line."
God.
New Jersey son, is he crazy?
He literally just went, "Fuck," and she goes, "It wasn't even that he wanted to have equality in the people online. It was just that he said fuck to him. That probably isn't professional." And I'm like, it's probably not professional that he just said any of that. So, and the funny part is at this point, people are now looking at him, so he didn't want to go on anymore. He just wanted to get the hell out of there. But, she just wanted to tell me about it. But it was funny because, I had to reprimand the dude, but I remember just laughing so hard. And my favorite thing is when I went up, I was like, I'm talking to him in the Buccaneer shed, and I'm like, "What the hell?" And he's like, "I don't know who that is. I don't listen to John Bon Jovi."
Oh my god!
No idea.
It's got to be somebody that's your taste, I guess.
Oh my god, that one always kills me. I just remember the line was so great. Like, "I don't give a fuck if you're the Pope. Get online." Of all things, the Buccaneer.
Yeah.
I know.
It's probably a 5-minute ride,
But it's
Yeah. Plus, I want to point out, anyone that's listening to the audio-only version of this podcast, if you go back on our Facebook page and look at the chat from this live version, there are so many stories being told in the chat of employees meeting famous people in a lot of different funny events. It is worth checking out.
Yeah.
I'm not going to name them all because they're popping up fast and furious.
Hey, we may have to make it a show, man. You never know.
I remember meeting Eddie Murphy more than once. Melanie Griffith and Antonio Banderas, when they were together, they came in as a family.
The one I remember, Malcolm Jamal Warner during the Cosby Show times was there a lot. And that was back when I was in 120 on the Mine Train, and he loved the Mine Train. So I remember putting up the episode of the Mine Train easily 10 times. So yeah, there's some people that were just cool. I also remember, I didn't do this, but I know this happened. I remember Emmanuel Lewis not being high enough to go on the bumper car. He's like, "I'm an adult." Like, "You don't meet the height requirement."
It's all about height. It's not about age.
Yeah.
That's some embarrassing shit. Yeah.
We had a similar situation on the Shockwave.
Well, that one's a stand-up coaster, so you can
Right. So you had to be able to get on that.
dangling with his feet. Oh, my testicles are in my throat, but I had a great time on the ride. All right.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna follow that question up with an even more loaded one. What was the most annoying thing that supervisors did that pissed you guys off? Besides the turnstile sheet lateness,
Could have
obviously.
been nothing for me, obviously. So.
Of course not.
There had to be stuff that we did that annoyed you guys.
Turning your stuff in after we ran all of the
Oh yeah.
masters. and like having changes after we were totally finished and had to redo all of that. That pissed me off.
I've been there.
But
I've been there to ask for changes. So
other than that, nothing super crazy.
You know what's funny? I remember in the beginning it was all paper, and then you guys started putting everything into the computer, and then you were more at a computer than just sitting behind a desk doing paper, right?
Yes, because we started.
Yeah, you started using programs and putting stuff in for efficiency and better tracking on a database versus like the fucking tack room being filled with more paper, you know, that eventually will just be destroyed or we're going to steal, you know, like our control cards, you know. But it's funny because as someone who now looks back on like the time passing, I remember when you guys were more paper, we would get yelled at so much more, and it made so much more sense because then you had to paper take and change shit and all that. Whereas when you guys started going into computer programs, we didn't get yelled at as much. It was more like a slap on the hand, and then it took you 2 minutes to update it, and then you're just like,
right, exactly,
you know. So
it was just because we could too. I think we could spank you, so we did.
Oh yeah. Well, sometimes we really deserved it. Sometimes we went in there thinking we're like the shit, and you guys were like, we're the shit. We're the office guys, and we're going to knock you down a peg. That was one of those things where I remember, like, you know, once you had like 3 or 4 years under your belt as a supervisor, you were pretty confident. And then there was certain spots you went to where you were just like, I can't show that here because they're more confident than I am. Like, they will knock me down a peg, you know? Like, you didn't go into like any of the, you know, the maintenance sheds and act cocky. It didn't matter how experienced you were. They would be like, shut the fuck up. You know?
Yes.
I remember I was always on best behavior at the office, and I would try to keep a low profile and just get in and out, like, you know, try not to get yelled at.
That was the way to do it. Yeah, stay under the radar. That was the best way to do it.
But you guys weren't afraid, right? Like, you weren't afraid of us.
I wasn't afraid of you guys. I was afraid that Karen would find me up there and yell at me.
No, even Allison. I wasn't afraid of Allison. I just felt so bad. I disappointed Allison. Yeah,
exactly. It was that we liked you guys. That's exactly perfect, Peluso, because that's how it worked for me too. It was never a fear of you guys. Although I'm a little different because I grew up from 16 on partying with you guys.
Right.
So I had a different attitude.
Agreed. It was a different rapport. Right.
It's definitely different. But like Chris said, I never feared you guys. But if I knew that my people didn't do something and you guys had to stay an extra hour, I felt like shit. Just like shit. Like I failed. I knew I failed. I knew my person failed, and thus I failed, you know? And then I blamed Andy. And then I said, Andy, you know?
Love you too, Allison. Never again. One time.
I personally don't have any other questions specific to the office that I could think of. I honestly, I think the biggest one for me was simply like, what the hell did you guys do? Like, I literally always saw you guys being busy, but never knew what you did. And I mean, in the back of my head, I'm like, I knew it had to be like paperwork type shit and all that. But it's funny because 30 years later, until you started saying things like masters and this and that, then I'm like, oh yeah, they had a lot of shit they had to do. Like it didn't.
And that's not even the corporates. That's just the daily stuff. Like, don't forget there was corporate, and then there were tons of reports for everyone else.
Yeah.
So, you know.
And you're just talking about rides too. We did shows and grounds and
admissions.
Admissions was a lot. And we would also go help out in guest relations, like if they were short staffed. So we did get to see a lot of that.
I don't think there's a job that I actually didn't do. Like I even drove the tractor during Fright Fest one year.
Me too.
Yes.
I did too.
Now that's some training there.
Right?
The parking lot for about
that's when we started in the parking lot.
Yeah, right.
It took me about 45 minutes to get it started, and then about 15 riding around the lot. And now it's like, get out there.
People
in the back. Wagon full of people in there.
That's it. We did it all.
We did. We really did. But I think we liked it. We were kind of team players. Like, this needs to happen. Let's get out there and
make
do
it happen. I agree.
We're team players. You guys were so invaluable at the end of the year. When we went weekends only and everybody went back to college, man, the office staff saved our ass on the major rides so freaking often. It wasn't funny. Yeah. There was, I think it was like there was a 4-year period where like Gigi would always work the Rapids. Like, period. Like, I'd be like, can we get Gigi at the Rapids? And you guys would be like, yup. And she gets stuck working the Rapids, you know? Like, And it's like,
Yeah, she can operate on manual for all we care. Like
at this point, we didn't give a shit. Yeah, it's absolutely true. Yeah. But yeah, you guys definitely saved our asses a lot. Do you guys have anything else? Chris, Andy, Scott, you guys have any other questions you guys were thinking of? I know I monopolized the questions, but I had a couple, so.
I don't think so. I'm trying to think. A little cloudy.
Chris,
I was like, oh God, I hope they don't ask specifics because I can't remember squat.
Well, I think you realize, Lynette, that's why we do this podcast. I've literally said 100 times, like, we're doing this because I think in 5 years, my senile mind will not remember anything.
I know. But it's great that you do it. I love it. I enjoy it. I think it's a lot. We were such a family, too. I think that's why everybody bounced off everyone else. And, it was just such a, like, why you didn't want to leave, because you were such a family and we were so connected.
It was tough. Yeah. I mean, like, it's the first job that a lot of us had for a long period of time. And
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like leaving family when you finally had to take the leave.
Yeah.
I mean, it was easy for me because some idiot like told me to come to games and I hated it there. I screwed it down. I gotta go. But
it's funny. The ending line of the movie Stand By Me, which I think is one of the best things that Stephen King ever wrote, even though I know it's the movie, it was in the book as well, is he said, like, looking back, I never had friends like I did when I was 12 years old. And then he just says, Jesus, does anybody? I always portray that to my work relationship with Great Adventure. My current job, I've been at twice as long as at Great Adventure, maybe almost 3 times now. But Great Adventure will always be the job that I think of as my best job ever, where I learned everything and I had
everything.
Like, they're so tight.
Yep.
There were people that you would only work with for 1 year and then they'd leave the park, and yet you may still be friends with them right now because that 1 year was so tight and you did so much with them.
Yes.
But yeah, there are people like you can just see randomly like out and about, and then you're like, oh my God, I haven't seen you in forever, and you have.
But it's like, yeah, it's definitely a place for sure. Yeah. Here's a question for all of you, and it kind of falls along that type of thought frame. Like, when I worked at the park, I rarely ever took a Saturday, Sunday off. Ever.
Oh, yeah,
I absolutely. Well, I also liked going to opening movie matinees. So I always tried to take Thursday, Friday off so I could go to a movie by myself. And the only people that'd be in the first matinee of a movie, which at the time used to be like 9 a.m. They don't do that anymore because of COVID. Movie theaters are like failing. But back when we worked in a park, you could actually go see a 9 a.m. matinee of a movie for its opening day on a Friday. And the only people who would be there were the old people that they bust to the movie theater. So it'd be me and like 10 old people, and I loved it. But I never understood the line working for a week, living for the weekends or working for the weekends. Right. That never made any sense to me my entire career at the park, because I was like, who the hell does that? Now I'm like a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday guy. Now that's not true. I mean, I work during the week. I can work at almost any time, but my job is technically 9 to 5. Technically. Right. And I live for the weekends. It's so fucking true. Like, I love the weekends. Like, I feel like when you left Great Adventure, the day was done and the next day was brand freaking new and blank. The only time you had a standover to the next day for us would be if there was something that happened the day before that was lingering, like a major breakdown or a termination or something like that. But otherwise, every day was a fresh, brand new day, and that was it. The day, like, you didn't carry shit over like you do in a normal job where it's like, you're on projects and like things are never ending and are always going. It felt like the one job where, like, if you actually left your job the next day, you didn't feel like you left anything behind because everything was closed out. You know what I mean? That's not like my current job. My current job, it's like when I leave on Friday, I'm so happy to disconnect because I know it's all going to be a shit show again on Monday. Do you guys feel like that? Like, do you guys, now it's more like adults outside the park, do you feel like you live for the weekends more? Because I hate it that I do.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah.
But when you're like a kid in the summertime, every day is the weekend. I mean,
yeah, it's true.
Whatever you want every day.
It's true.
There was also, too, I'll throw this out there. What days off? There was a lot of that, too. I didn't take days off. Like, I was not only having fun, but an idiot and just like, yeah, I'll do it. And I'll be honest, like, I can't work as many hours. I believe that I got a little burnt, from all those hours. And I credit a lot of that to food service more than anything. It was less voluntary and more mandatory there. And a bit too much. I'll just leave it at that. But rides, I enjoyed it. The only thing that was now we talked about fear a little bit. And they were very understanding. But Phyllis calling me in the morning when I've done like 10, 12 doubles in a row. And she's like, Chris, like, you know, because I just slept through every alarm. Nothing woke me up, you know. And yeah, her or Billy would just be like, just stay home. They were just like, do not come in. Just stay home. They, you know.
Was that when you were salary or as a supervisor or what? Were you like doing all this when you were salary or?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I worked, I think it was 136 hours the week of Pfizer. And I always said the hardest part about it was the 100-hour weeks leading up to it and the 110-hour week the week after it. Like no break. Abusive. I'm saying it. It was abusive, and nobody stopped it from happening, and it was all down on paper too. And
just say no.
Yeah, it took a toll.
Just say no.
In the winter, 75-hour weeks in the winter.
This was when you were at Foods, though, right?
Yes, and that's why I was not Foods for more than 1 year, and would never encourage anyone to go back there if it's still like that.
It's
but
so funny.
Some of it was management, though.
It's so funny because I like I said, I had the opportunity to go to full-time Foods, and I bailed on it, and there were a lot of reasons. I mean, the most was the merger. I was just not comfortable. Scott also was already working for a hiring service along with Andy and Ken Mount, and they had already said, like, we can get you in on this place, you know. So it just felt like, kind of like Lynette was saying in the beginning, it felt like the right time to jump ship. But then I also thought about not only the thought of, like, if the merger happens, I'm probably going to get freaking like let go right away anyway. So my goddamn time. But then also, like, I just came from being giving an opportunity to be made instantly a full-timer in a department I had never worked in games. And those games people did not respect me at fucking all. They liked me or they hated me, but very few of them respected me for a very logical reason, because a lot of them were people that had worked for years for a full-time position, and suddenly Andy has one, I have one. All these rides guys are swooping in and taking them. And in my head, I was like, fuck, do I want to go through this all over again in Foods? I don't know anything about Foods.
You made the right decision, man.
Foods.
Yeah.
They're going to treat me like shit. I was like, the hell with all of this.
And don't get me wrong, I met some really great people there. There were a lot of fun people there. Like Marcus, one of my favorite people there, big Atlantic City guy. And I don't know if he ever listened to this, but I just thought of Marcus. His brother, we know very well. Yeah. And
Marcus was awesome.
Yeah, and I just went to Atlantic City a little while ago, and I thought of him because he would come in, or I would come in and be like, took Route 9 home again, because that's what you would do if you lost everything. You had to take Route 9 home. It was the greatest. Now, a lot of great people there, don't get me wrong, but a bit too much.
That's interesting. One of the things that soured me was, I remember my first year as Soup, we were still salary. And like, you know, as an operations right Soup, you would put 50 hours plus in a week and only get paid for 40, not bad an eye, because you were salary, you were just whatever. But then, like, was it the following year or the year after that, they switched from salary to being hourly? And I remember thinking, oh, that's great. I'm probably going to get paid for my overtime. But then full-timers made such a stink anytime anybody ever dared go over 40 hours that, like, I wind up having to, like, you know, sign out for 40 hours, but still have to work the extra 50 or whatever. I was like, this sucks. I was like, that was like the first thing that soured me on it when I was Soup. So, yeah.
Gotcha.
Back to your question, Steve, I think that Great Adventure actually prepared me to be a nurse, because we work holidays, weekends, overnights. There is no weekend. Whatever you're off is your weekend. So you could say working for the weekend, but your weekend might be Tuesday, Wednesday.
That's true. That's true.
The only thing I ever hated was working on the 4th of July.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't mind working the weekends because, like, it's
great fireworks that night.
I mean, yeah, we at least working in Western, we get to go see the Beach Boys. And,
that's true. That's true.
You miss out on everything else.
True.
Yeah, because you worked every holiday.
Yeah, but you had your friends at work.
That was the thing, exactly. Like, I mean, I didn't. It's funny, when I became a Soup, I stopped doing this. But when I was a black tag and a lead, I mean, even on my days off, I was hanging out in the park with other people.
Yeah.
Like, literally basically lived at the freaking park, or we were out like nighttime at the beach or something. But even during the day, we'd go back to the park.
Yeah.
As a soup, I didn't do that as much. As a soup, I pretty much was like, I could stay away from the park. But
And
you
don't
know.
call out and get caught in the park. Lynette, have you
Oh
ever?
yeah, that was a
You always
that's
heard
just-
of those people.
it's that was one of the things though, where as a soup, you're just like, how stupid are you?
Yeah, I mean, come on.
They would call out and walk right by the office. And you'd be
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
It's like, what
They
are
wouldn't
you
even go
doing?
through the main gate. They'd walk
Yep.
through gate 5.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
working
yeah.
rides and you're coming.
You
here
know
to
what?
go
You're too
on
dumb. You
rides.
shouldn't be allowed to work here. So
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then we would just call that supervisor. Guess who I just saw?
That's a
so
fun
funny.
one.
I used to
Yeah,
love
that's
getting
a
those
fun
calls too. Like,
yeah, we were
seriously?
tattletales, weren't we?
Yes,
Oh,
that wasn't right, and that wasn't right.
Yeah, well, we're the ones who have to go out and cover their shifts, right?
Exactly.
agree.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. That was a funny. You mentioned earlier too, Steve, about closing the door, and like that's a good point, because you might be bringing somebody in for a written warning, and it escalates because that person just calls
Goes
you this, that, and the
crazy.
other, and just loses their shit over their
Yeah.
written warning, and it jumps up a notch out of nowhere. So the door was open, you thought it was going to be routine.
that's why I was asking, because I had a few that got heated, where the person got
Oh,
really
yeah.
loud.
I remember
Really?
those,
Yeah.
but nothing super crazy where we had to call security or anything.
Well, honestly, your answer for you guys is the best thing in the world, because, I mean, if I worked in the office, I wouldn't want any part of that shit. Like, let you all deal with it. My name's Paul. It's between you all. I'm staying the hell away from you all. Like, I don't want no part of your terms, So that made the most logical sense to me, because I probably termed, I termed a lot of people, and not voluntarily. I mean, they were all valid terms, but at the end of the day,
course.
I hated doing it. There was
Yeah.
never a thing I liked
No.
doing. One thing I liked about it is that I was able to shut my emotions off and always be very clear about, like, this has nothing to do with you or me. This just has to do with this. This is why you're being termed. And that made my terms easy, but it didn't mean that there weren't bad ones. I mean, I remember one dude, I'm not going to say his name, but it sounded like Rad Ravis, who was like, I will punch you in your fucking face before we make it out of the gate. And I was like, I would love to see you punch me in the face before we make it out of the gate, because there's security all over here. And I basically just called his bluff and shut him the hell up. But it was one of those deals where it was like, why are you even making this threat? Like, you deserve this. Like, so.
Yeah, exactly.
But I know that although I didn't have any that actually broke into a fight, I know there were some that went really bad that I've heard stories of. So I figured you guys probably had seen them. So that was the only reason I haven't brought that up.
No, really, I was just glad it wasn't me. That's
I hear you. Let's talk about a controversial thing that is not Six Flags, but it's park related. So SeaWorld sent out an announcement, and some people are losing their mind thinking this is the worst possible thing in the world. And some people think this is really cool. I'm actually on the cool thing. I think Scott would be on the cool thing too. This was their post a little while ago, like a couple weeks ago. For guests to our park, what's better than beer? Free beer! Celebrate the fact that free beer is back at SeaWorld Orlando. Head to Waterway Bar now through August 4th, and every time you come to our park, you get a free ice-cold 7-ounce beer each time you visit this summer. There's people that are like, they're just promoting drunkenness in the park. And there's people like us where I'm like, I think that's the coolest shit in the world. If I live near SeaWorld and I actually took my kids to that park all the time, and you're like, first of all, it's a 7-ounce beer. You're not exactly getting me drunk on
You get a
7-ounce
Dixie
beer.
cup, yeah.
really.
I think that's the coolest thing in the world. I would not recommend it at Great Adventure, because Great Adventure, you don't need them drinking anymore, and they're already drinking now. They have beer back in the park, because we were all there back when beer garden was open every day, and there were a lot of fights. But I think that's cool. What do you guys think about that? Like,
Plus,
if you just offered one free beer every visit.
SeaWorld is owned by Anheuser-Busch, so they're
Right.
promoting our products.
Yes.
Right.
It's only
Yeah.
like products that you're getting for free.
So how do they just limit it to a person? Is that what
You
you
get
free
one
one.
free beer a person.
Okay.
Yep, that's it. One free 7-ounce beer a person.
And if you don't want it, you don't have to take it. So who cares?
Someone else take it,
Yeah.
Right, but
and then they have two.
I wonder if there's a way to do that. I wonder if there's a way. I thought about it.
Last time I was there, we actually took advantage of this. Was a few years ago.
Yeah.
My wife, I was like, "You're not drinking beer. Go get me a beer." Like,
Well, I guess they
Yeah,
get.
of course. I don't care about the beer. I'm not the biggest fan of SeaWorld. We'll have to see where they're at with the animals. You know what I mean? They had some bad animal stuff happening. But I don't care about the beer.
Yeah,
Sell
right.
beer. If they were promoting drunkenness, that's different. But they're giving everybody a Dixie cup of beer. Who cares?
People don't get drunk and throw up on the rides, because cleaning that up
so
was
disgusting.
just-
Well, and that's
Anywhere,
exactly my
everywhere.
point. It's not like Great Adventure where you have all these major rides where people do they become drunken messes. It's not that bad at SeaWorld. You know what I mean? Like, so
Right.
I don't know. It used to be like a mess at Action Park, though.
Oh.
They serve
wow.
alcohol and
Action Park's rides were meant to toss you around, though. I mean, you didn't even need a beer to get an upset stomach on those things, you know?
Everybody was wasted at Action
If
Park.
having an upset stomach is the worst thing that happened to you at Action Park, you had a good day.
That was a good thing.
Yeah, you made it out
Good
well.
day.
Yeah, you did well if you got out of there alive. But Disney's covered in alcohol. I mean, Epcot,
That's
you
true.
couldn't have any more alcohol. It's expensive, but it doesn't stop anyone.
Yeah, but
And there's plenty of drinking going on, and it's all good. Usually fine. There's always going to be an incident. There's always some joker.
Magic Kingdom, they only allow it at a couple of upscale sit-down restaurants.
Exactly.
But everybody, you're right. Epcot, that's what it's known for. It's
Everywhere. Yeah, it's everywhere.
Drinking around the world.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's the best.
So they had stopped alcohol in the park, after like 88? It was like after the Easter riot year.
Yeah.
I was going to say, whatever that big riot was when those big gangs came
That
in.
was one of the dispatch questions I
was-
had, but I'm sick. I was going to ask about 999s and the fights,
Ooh.
the 28s.
Those were scary.
Yeah. How many of those you just had? But
And it was a while. It was many seasons before they started selling beer again.
Yeah, it was definitely on embargo for a while. Yeah.
Like 10 or something years. It was a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
But when they had alcohol, we had a lot of 999s.
Yeah.
And once there was, you never ever had them. So if you did have them, you were very scared.
I gotta
Yeah.
tell you
Because
that
it was something bad.
the whole time I worked there, they did not serve alcohol, and no, I never called out a 999.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was never involved in one.
I was two.
Wow.
Yeah.
I ran to one, but it was more of a fight, I would say. But a lot of fights. There was a really bad one. I don't know if we want to save for another show, but a really bad one me and Kenny ran to from the break room at Batman. Somehow it fell out of that area behind Rapids, came through the gates. This big fight,
Oh, wow.
like 7-8 people, girls and guys going at it. And also saw there was a great one in right outside the fountain in the merch stand to the left if you're looking at the gate. And you just saw like mannequins flying around. It was awesome. I didn't know what the hell I was running into, but you just ran, and there was no call. You just saw shit flying everywhere. That was great. That was a great one. So many good fights.
In grounds, we used to have a lot of, because of the concerts, like me and Heidi would just literally stay together because we were so scared and just go around like the whole circle, like trying to clean, but you couldn't even move. And I can't even tell you how many times, like we had knives thrown on it. Like it was so bad. It was so bad. Crazy.
Those were the days though when Beer Garden was open fully and you can just go and get tanked. But then when they got rid of the beer and then they finally brought it back, they brought it back in such a limited way that even now, like when me and Scott just started going to the park again last year, and we get a couple beers while we're there, but it's almost in a way where they're kind of monitoring you properly. It would be a lot harder now to become a drunken mess than it was in the past.
It's got to be at least $12 a beer, too.
And that's the other
That
thing.
too, yeah.
Easily.
Although, let's be quite honest, that does not stop the drunks, because I go to concerts and I just went to Tears for Fears and we watched a lady so fucking hammered, she fell on an older guy and rolled down the hill. And then no one could get her up. And I'm like, and she was our age. And I'm like, you're old enough not to be doing that shit. And those beers are also like, $18 for, like
baseball
a big beer.
games, man. Baseball games, it stops nobody. And
That's my point, though. Yeah. I mean, if people want to drink, the drinker is going to drink. If it's available, they're going to drink. But it's like, while we've been in there, I haven't seen any of that. And we've been on a couple crowded days, like during Fright Fest and stuff. And it's like, it's available, but like it's not the same as the old days. Like,
No, I agree.
It's not the same in so many ways.
That's true.
You don't see the people, the camaraderie of like the employees, like, on the rides working together and stuff so much. It's
true.
Very, very different. It sucked all the fun out.
I went back for a brief stint, and that is exactly correct, Scott. Maybe it was because I didn't know it, but I knew a decent amount of people still. it was different. It was like 3-4 years later, and it was very different. It wasn't as fun. Not nearly as fun. Very different.
I had my friend Tony went back too, and he worked first rides, and then he went to shows because this was like maybe 10 years ago, and in your 40s, going back to catching cars at the cables is just not fucking easy. Oh. And he bluntly said, he's like, it's not as fun. It's grueling work now. And even when he went in shows to make it a little easier on himself, he's like, this is not the park we left at all. Like it's just, there's none of that. That also, I think there's a little bit of a difference in our mentality when we're like 18 though, and we're now, and we're a little more worldly, so,
of course.
We're getting close to the end of our time, so I'm gonna give you guys one more safari related news thing, not our safari, but I just thought it was a perfect news story to end because it's sad and yet it made me laugh because I'm a horrible person. It's from the New York Post. It's from literally a week ago. Elephant tramples woman to death, then attacks her corpse at funeral.
What the?
Oh, that's
an addictive elephant.
Got invited to the funeral?
This is
exactly
a true story, and it's horrible to laugh at this, but I couldn't stop laughing. A 70-year-old woman in India was trampled to death by an elephant, and her corpse was then bizarrely attacked by the same beast at her funeral. The report goes on to say,
"Wow,
that's crazy."
That is crazy.
Performing her last rites, and as is normal for their customs, they were getting ready to light the funeral pile when the elephant allegedly ran back in, grabbed her body, tossed it in the air, and then ran away so no one could catch it, and they have never seen it again.
What the hell?
That cannot be real.
That lady, that elephant, because that elephant was like, I'm not only going to kill you, I'm coming back when you're going to
yeah, the family next. I mean, I love animals. That's one dick elephant right there.
Did something to
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking the woman
Yeah.
did
What the hell did she do to that elephant?
Yeah.
Well, they say they never forget, right? So she must have.
Yeah.
And look, how long have we worked with a safari? And I've never heard of an elephant being that much of a dick.
No.
No.
Chip on his shoulder.
That one just cracked me up. I was like, that is the best safari story I've ever heard. So.
Yes, thank you. That was crazy.
Well, folks, on that note, holy shit, time goes fast. It has been an hour and a half already.
That feels
it's
like a good place to stop.
Yeah, it feels like a proper place, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, time does fly when we're having fun. Thank you very much, Lynette and Jackie, for joining us. Thank you everybody for joining us on Facebook Live. There were a ton of you this time, and for all the people that have replied and commented, just so you know, we always do read your comments. We appreciate it.
They kicked ass. They made it a great show. And
there are a lot of great comments on there. I have to
guess between the guests and the comments. Hell yeah, this was an awesome show. Yeah,
Awesome.
Queenan, how could you not recognize Stevie Wonder? I mean,
it's true. Queenan put something about Stevie Wonder.
I love Queenan.
Buddy.
Queenan's the best. That's how locked in he was. He was locked in. Queenan.
Oh, Jesus. All right, on that note, signing off for now, I am Steve Hicks. My co-hosts are
Scott Loudon,
Chris Peluso,
Andy Auletti,
and Lynette.
And Jackie.
Thank you for joining us, everybody. Until next time, make it a great day. Bye, guys.
Bye.